Let me ask you something. How many of you are sitting here today with a dream, a vision, a goal, but it feels too far away? Maybe it's building the business you've been talking about for years. Maybe it's losing that weight you've carried for too long. Maybe it's fixing a relationship you've almost given up on, and you tell yourself, one day, when I have more time, more money, more energy, I'll start. But you and I both know, one day is code for never. Here's the truth. You don't need a massive leap to change your life. You don't need the perfect moment. You don't even need all the answers right now. You need something far simpler, far more powerful. You need your first win, your small win, because small wins are the spark that ignite big change. They're the proof to your brain that progress is possible. They're the thing that turns I can't into I just did. And once that belief shifts, your entire life shifts. I've seen people come back from rock bottom, not because they had $1 million plan, but because they made one small promise to themselves, and they kept it. That little victory lit a fire they didn't know they had. So if you've ever felt stuck, if you've ever felt like you're living the same year on repeat, stay with me, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how to harness the power of small wins to create unstoppable momentum, to rewire your brain for success, and to finally become the person you've always known you could be. This isn't theory. This is the blueprint. And it starts right now. You've got to understand something about momentum. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's not even about talent. Momentum is simply energy in motion. And here's the thing. Once you start it, it has a tendency to keep going. But here's the other side. If you're not in motion, nothing changes. It's like trying to push a massive, heavy flywheel that hasn't moved in years. At first, it's stubborn, it's heavy, it's frustrating. You push and nothing happens, and you're tempted to think, what's the point? But you give it another push, still nothing. Then another push, and maybe, just maybe, it shifts an inch. That inch is your small win. The problem most people have is they think the first push should spin the wheel instantly. And when it doesn't, they stop, they walk away, and they tell themselves a story about why it's not possible. They talk themselves out of their own breakthrough because they forgot that momentum doesn't come from a giant leap. It comes from those first few stubborn pushes that seem to do nothing until they do everything. Every big success you've ever admired, every championship team, every thriving business, every person who transformed their health, it didn't start with the huge, dramatic movie scene breakthrough you think it did. It started with something so small, so unsexy, so ordinary that most people wouldn't even notice it. One action done consistently until it became the spark that set everything else in motion. I want you to picture this. Imagine a rocket on the launch pad. Do you know the majority of its fuel is burned just to get it a few hundred feet off the ground? That's the hard part. That's the resistance phase. That's where the small wins matter most. Every little burst of energy is building toward liftoff. But if you cut the fuel too soon, if you give up before those small wins stack, you'll never escape the gravity of your current reality. And momentum is sneaky. It works both ways. If you win small, you start building in the right direction. But if you lose small, skip one workout, break one promise to yourself, make one excuse, you're building momentum in the opposite direction. The scary thing is, most people don't realize they're doing it. They think, it's just one day, it's just one choice. But momentum compounds. You're either spiraling up or spiraling down. There's no standing still. When you commit to small wins, you create a ripple effect. That one workout doesn't just make you a little fitter. It makes you feel more disciplined. That discipline bleeds into your work. Your better work brings better results. Those results make you feel more confident, so you show up more fully in your relationships. Before you know it, the original win has multiplied into a transformation that people can't help but notice. They'll tell you, wow, you've changed. And you'll think, if only you knew it started with something so small. I remember talking to someone who was drowning in debt, stressed out of their mind. They told me, I'll start saving when I have more money. But that's not how momentum works. We set a ridiculously small win, saving just $5 a week. It was laughable. But here's what happened. 5 became 10, 10 became 50, 50 became 100. And before long, they weren't just saving. They were paying off debt, building investments, and walking around with this energy of confidence they never had before. Not because the small win was financially huge at the start, but because it was emotionally huge. It told their brain, I'm in control, I can do this. And that shift in identity was worth more than the money in the early days. Your first win doesn't need to be impressive to anyone else. Stop trying to start big, start certain. Start in a way that you can't lose. Do something so small you can't talk yourself out of it. Then do it again tomorrow and again the next day. Because here's what happens. You'll start to feel different. You'll start to think differently. You'll start to expect more from yourself, not because someone else told you to, but because your brain has physical proof that you follow through. This is why I always tell people, never underestimate the first win, that first sale in your business, that first mile you run, that first page you write. It's not just a task completed, it's momentum being born. And once momentum is alive, it doesn't like to die. It feeds on repetition, on energy, on commitment. And when it's strong enough, it will carry you through the days you don't feel like showing up, because by then you'll have already proven to yourself that you can. I've seen people try to wait for motivation before taking action. That's backwards. Motivation doesn't create action. Action creates motivation. And it's not even big action that starts it. It's small, deliberate, intentional wins stacked on top of each other until you can't imagine going back. It's like the difference between a cold engine that struggles to start and one that's been running all day. Once it's warmed up, everything's smoother, faster, easier. But here's the kicker. You can't fake small wins. You can't talk about them, plan them, dream about them, and expect momentum to show up. Momentum is loyal to those who move. You have to earn it with action, even when no one's watching, even when it feels insignificant, even when you're not sure it's working yet. Because the truth is, every win, no matter how small, is a brick in the foundation of something bigger than you can imagine right now. If you're sitting here thinking, I've tried before and I've failed, then listen closely. The problem wasn't you, it was your strategy. You tried to sprint without first learning to walk. You tried to move mountains without first learning to move pebbles. And that's why you felt crushed by the weight of it all. But if you focus on the small wins, stacking them day after day, you'll look back and realize the mountain moved itself because momentum did the heavy lifting for you. So the question is, what's your first win going to be? Not your ultimate goal, not the 10-year vision. The first win, the one you can own today, the one that proves to yourself that you can move, that you can start, that you can push that flywheel one stubborn inch. Because once it moves, just once, you've already begun to rewrite your story. And that's the power of small wins. They create the momentum that carries you further than you ever thought you could go. One of the most powerful forces driving human behavior isn't willpower, it's progress. Progress is the ultimate human drug. When we feel it, when we see it, when we measure it, everything changes. And I'm not talking about the illusion of progress where you're busy all day but nothing meaningful moves forward. I'm talking about the kind of progress your brain can see, track, and celebrate. That's what flips the switch from I should to I must. You see, your brain is designed to respond to wins. Every time you achieve something, no matter how small, it releases a chemical, dopamine. That's not just a feel-good hormone. That's a motivation amplifier. It's your brain's way of saying, hey, this feels good. Let's do it again. That's why small wins are so powerful. They're not just changing your circumstances. They're rewiring your brain to crave more of the same behavior. The opposite is also true. If you go too long without a win, your brain starts associating effort with disappointment. It starts saying, why bother? It's not worth it. And that's when you lose your edge. That's when you stop trying as hard. That's when you start shrinking your dreams to match your current level of effort instead of raising your effort to match your dreams. When you understand the psychology of progress, you stop waiting for giant results before you allow yourself to feel good. You stop withholding pride until you've reached the end goal. You start celebrating along the way because you realize that every small step is fuel for the next one. And that celebration isn't about ego. It's about keeping your nervous system engaged, your mind sharp, and your motivation alive. Think about video games for a second. Why are they so addictive? Because they're built around constant feedback and progress indicators. You complete a level, you get points, you defeat a small enemy, you get a reward. You don't wait until the very end of the game to feel like you've achieved something. You feel it constantly, and that's what keeps you playing. Life works the same way, but most people live like a game with no checkpoints, no score, no feedback. They work for months, sometimes years, waiting for one massive moment of success. And by the time they get there, if they even do, they've lost all the excitement along the way. That's why they burn out. That's why they quit halfway. The psychology of progress demands that you see and feel the growth as it's happening. When I work with someone who's lost their drive, it's almost never because they don't care anymore. It's because they haven't felt a win in too long. And when that happens, their self-image starts to collapse. They stop believing they can make it happen, not because they lack the ability, but because they haven't been reminded of their own capability in a while. A single small win can flip that entire narrative in an instant. I've seen it in the gym. Someone hasn't worked out in years. They feel out of shape, weak, and discouraged. On day one, I don't ask them to run 5 miles. I just have them lift something light or walk for 20 minutes. Then we celebrate it, not fake celebration, genuine acknowledgement. Their brain says, wait, I did it. I'm back in the game. And the next day, they want to do more. Not because I forced them, but because they tasted progress. The same principle applies in business. I've seen struggling entrepreneurs try to make giant leaps, and every time they miss the mark, their confidence drops. But when they focus on small, visible wins, one new client, one improved system, one better conversation, they start stacking those wins, and suddenly the energy shifts. They're no longer desperate for the big win because they're living in a constant state of winning. Here's the part most people miss. Progress isn't just external, it's internal. Yes, you can track sales, weight loss, performance metrics, but the deeper wins are in how you think, how you feel, how you respond to challenges. Maybe last year, when something went wrong, you'd spiral for days. Now you bounce back in hours. That's progress. Maybe last year you would have avoided a tough conversation. Now you lean into it. That's progress. If you only measure the visible, you'll miss half of what you're achieving. This is where self-awareness becomes your greatest ally. You need to train yourself to notice progress the way a gold miner notices a glint in the dirt. It might seem small now, but it's worth everything, because once you see it, you can multiply it. And when you multiply it, you start to experience what I call the upward spiral. You feel good, so you do more. You do more, so you see more progress. You see more progress, so you feel unstoppable. And here's something that will change the way you think about progress forever. You don't have to feel ready to start. In fact, you usually won't. Progress creates readiness. The act of moving forward, even in the smallest way, flips the mental state you need to keep going. Too many people wait for confidence before they act. Confidence doesn't come first. Proof does. And proof is built one small win at a time. I can tell you from years of working with people at every level, once someone experiences a real win, no matter how small, it's like waking up a part of them they forgot was there. You see it in their posture, in their voice, in their eyes. That spark is the psychology of progress in action. It's the inner knowing that says, I'm not who I was yesterday. I'm moving forward. So here's the challenge. Stop making your progress invisible. Stop moving the goalposts so far away that you can't enjoy the game. Break your big goals into smaller checkpoints and let yourself celebrate them. Not because you're done, but because you're on your way. If you only let yourself feel proud at the finish line, you'll rob yourself of the very fuel you need to get there. The human spirit craves progress more than perfection. When you feed that craving every day with small, visible wins, you don't just build success, you build belief. And belief is the most valuable currency you can ever own. Because when you believe you're moving forward, nothing can stop you. One of the biggest killers of dreams isn't lack of talent, lack of money, or lack of opportunity. It's overwhelm. You felt it before. That moment when the vision is so big, the task is so massive, that instead of feeling inspired, you feel paralyzed. You look at everything you have to do, and it feels like standing at the bottom of a mountain with no trail, no map, and no climbing gear. You start asking yourself, where do I even start? And the longer you sit there trying to figure it out, the heavier it feels. Overwhelm is sneaky because it disguises itself as logic. You tell yourself you're planning or thinking it through, but really you're stalling. Not because you're lazy, but because your brain can't find a starting point that feels doable. You're trying to swallow the whole meal in one bite instead of just taking the first forkful. And here's the truth. Big goals don't get done in big chunks. They get done in small, bite-sized steps that you can actually take right now. When you're overwhelmed, your nervous system goes into survival mode. It's not looking for creativity. It's not looking for strategy. It's looking for escape. That's why people binge Netflix instead of writing the book, scroll on their phone instead of making the calls, clean the kitchen instead of working on the business plan. It's not that they don't care. It's that their brain is saying, this feels too big, let's run away. So how do you beat that? You break it down until it's so small that your brain says, oh, I can do that. That's the key. Making it so clear, so specific, so small that it doesn't trigger the overwhelm response. You want to write a book? Don't focus on 300 pages. Focus on writing one paragraph. You want to lose 50 pounds? Don't focus on 50 pounds. Focus on drinking one glass of water and going for a 10-minute walk today. You want to start a business? Don't focus on the six-figure revenue goal. Focus on having one meaningful conversation with a potential client. When you do this, something incredible happens. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop giving yourself a dozen reasons why you can't start, because there's no good excuse for not taking a step that's small. And once you take that step, you feel a win. And once you feel a win, momentum kicks in. I remember working with someone who was drowning in overwhelm because they wanted to start a business while still working a full-time job. Their head was full of all the things they had to do: branding, marketing, legal paperwork, building a website, finding clients. They couldn't move forward because they were trying to solve all of it in their head before taking any action. We broke it down to one thing. Spend 5 minutes today writing a simple list of 10 people they could call to share their idea. That was it. The next day, the task was call one person from that list. In 2 weeks, they had their first paying client. And the whole time they were telling me, I can't believe how simple this was once I just started. Breaking overwhelm into actionable steps isn't about lowering your standards. It's about building a bridge from where you are to where you want to be. That bridge isn't made out of giant leaps. It's made out of small, steady steps you can actually take without freezing up. Every small step you complete is like laying down another plank. The more planks you lay, the stronger the bridge becomes, and the less overwhelming the gap feels. The problem is, we've been trained to worship the big moments, the dramatic before and after pictures, the overnight success stories. But if you zoom in on any of those stories, you'll see they're really made of hundreds, even thousands, of tiny, almost boring steps. Nobody celebrates the first cold call, the first 10 minutes on the treadmill, the first rough draft. But those are the moments that matter most, because without them, you never get to the big reveal. Sometimes people tell me, I don't know where to start. And my answer is always, start anywhere you can start. Stop trying to find the perfect first step. Take a first step. It's better to move forward imperfectly than to sit still waiting for clarity that will never come until you move. Clarity comes from action, not the other way around. And here's another truth. When you take a big, overwhelming goal and break it into steps, you start to see patterns. You start to realize which steps matter and which are just busy work. You start to learn faster because you're not stuck in theory, you're learning in motion. And in motion, you discover that most of the things you were afraid of aren't as big as they seemed. That conversation you were dreading takes 5 minutes. That task you thought would be impossible turns out to be easy once you start. Think about building muscle. You don't go to the gym and try to lift 300 pounds on day one. You start with a weight you can manage. And each time you lift it, you get stronger, which allows you to lift more next time. Breaking your goals into smaller, actionable steps works the same way. It's progressive overload for your mind and your life. You build capacity as you go. One of the most freeing things you can learn is that you don't have to solve everything today. You don't have to carry the whole mountain on your back. You just have to take one step toward it. And if you do that every day, the mountain starts to shrink in your mind because now you're closer to it and your legs are stronger from the climb. Here's the mistake most people make. They wait to feel ready before they start breaking things down. But the act of breaking things down is what makes you ready. It changes the story from, this is too big, to, this is just a series of small things I can do. That shift alone is often enough to turn paralysis into momentum. If you're facing something right now that feels too big, too heavy, too much, stop looking at the whole thing. Zoom in. Find the smallest next action you can take and do it today. Don't wait. Don't overthink it. Because once you've taken that first step, you've already changed the game. You're no longer someone who's stuck. You're someone who's moving. And when you're moving, you're winning. Most people underestimate the power of what they do every single day because they're too busy judging themselves based on what happens in one day. If it's a great day, they feel unstoppable. If it's a bad day, they feel like a failure. But success isn't created in a single day. It's created in the accumulation of days. It's built in the small, seemingly ordinary choices you make over and over until they snowball into something extraordinary. Think about money for a second. If you put a small amount into a bank account every day, it doesn't seem like much in the beginning. You don't notice the change right away, but as time goes on, the interest starts to kick in and that growth starts to accelerate. That's compounding. It works with money, but it also works with habits, with skills, with relationships, with your health, with your mindset. The problem is, most people quit before they ever see the compounding effect take hold. They work hard for a week, maybe a month, and because they don't see instant results, they stop. But the truth is, the biggest payoffs always come later, after the consistency has had time to multiply your results behind the scenes. If you've ever planted a tree, you know the first season isn't exciting. You water it, you tend to it, but it barely grows. Then one day, years later, you look up and realize it's providing shade, fruit, life. And you think, when did that happen? It didn't happen all at once. It happened every single day you cared for it, even when it looked like nothing was happening. Daily victories are like that. You can't always see their power right away, but they're working on you. That one workout you almost skipped, that one conversation you had instead of avoiding it, that one choice to drink water instead of soda, that one moment you pushed through resistance and did what you said you'd do. On their own, they seem small. Together, they're unstoppable. I remember talking to someone who wanted to run a marathon but had never been a runner. The thought of 26 miles felt impossible, so they committed to running for 5 minutes a day. Just 5. Some days they went longer, some days they stopped at 5, but they never missed a day. By the end of a few months, they weren't just running miles, they were running with confidence. That's the compounding effect. The body adapts, the mind adapts, and it all starts with consistent, repeatable wins. The same principle applies in business. I know entrepreneurs who built multi-million-dollar companies, not by doing one massive deal, but by showing up every single day to make one call, send one email, build one connection. Over the years, those daily actions created networks, opportunities, and revenue streams they couldn't have imagined when they started. What you have to remember is that consistency beats intensity when it comes to compounding. It's not about how hard you work one day. It's about how committed you are to showing up day after day, even when you're tired, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one's watching. The results don't always announce themselves right away, but they are always accumulating. And compounding isn't just about skill or performance, it's about identity. Every time you follow through on something, you reinforce the belief that you are the kind of person who follows through. That belief compounds. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen the muscle of self-trust. That muscle compounds. Over time, those small acts of discipline create an unshakable confidence. Not because you made one big leap, but because you stacked hundreds of small wins. Here's the thing. Compounding also works in reverse. If you neglect the small choices, if you let yourself off the hook just for today, if you stack enough small losses, you create the same in the wrong direction. You don't wake up out of shape, broke, or disconnected from your partner overnight. It happens slowly, one small compromise at a time, until it becomes your new normal. That's why daily victories matter so much. They're either compounding your growth or compounding your decline. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is to stop asking, will this one choice really matter? And start asking, if I repeat this choice for the next year, where will it take me? Because that's the truth about compounding. It magnifies whatever you feed it. If you feed it excuses, fear, and procrastination, it will multiply them. If you feed it courage, discipline, and action, it will multiply those instead. And here's where it gets exciting. Once compounding tips in your favor, it's hard to stop it. You start getting results faster because the foundation is already built. That's why people say, the rich get richer or the fit get fitter. It's not luck, it's compounding momentum. They've done the daily work for so long that now the results are snowballing without extra effort. And you can have that too if you commit to stacking your wins long enough to see it happen. You have to think of every day like a brick. One brick on its own isn't much. But if you lay one brick every single day, eventually you've built a wall. Keep going, and you've built a fortress. Keep going after that, and you've built an entire city. But most people lay a few bricks, get bored, and walk away. Then wonder why they're still standing in an empty field. If you want the compounding effect to change your life, you can't just flirt with it. You have to marry it. That means committing to daily victories even when they don't seem to matter, because they do. Every rep in the gym is a deposit in your health account. Every time you choose kindness over anger, you're investing in your relationships. Every time you learn something new, you're depositing into your growth account. Over time, the interest on those investments will blow your mind. But here's the catch. You won't see the interest right away. That's why patience is part of the game. Most people fail not because they can't do the work, but because they can't handle the waiting. They want the fruit without planting the seed, watering it, and letting it grow. But the people who win at the highest level understand. You don't rush compounding. You feed it. You protect it. You let it work for you. And when you do, one day you'll wake up and realize your life feels completely different. Not because of one big event, but because of the hundreds, maybe thousands, of small wins you stacked along the way. That's the real magic. The day you look around and realize you built it all one daily victory at a time. Because that's how extraordinary lives are created, not in giant leaps, but in the compounding effect of small, consistent wins. The most powerful thing about small wins isn't just the progress you make. It's the person you become in the process. You can set a goal, you can build a plan, you can even make progress. But if your identity, the way you see yourself, doesn't change, you'll always snap back to where you started. That's why so many people lose weight and gain it back, make money and lose it, get ahead and fall behind. They change their results temporarily, but they never change the story of who they are. Your actions are always trying to match your identity. If you see yourself as someone who's undisciplined, even when you have a good streak, you'll sabotage yourself eventually because it doesn't feel like you. If you believe you're not good with money, even when you get a raise, you'll find ways to spend it and be back where you started. But when your wins, no matter how small, start to rewrite your identity, everything changes because now your behavior has to line up with the new version of you. This is why small wins are so powerful. They give you undeniable proof that you can be different. You're not just hoping you'll change. You're stacking evidence that you are changing, and your brain can't argue with evidence. When you tell yourself, I'm the kind of person who follows through, and then you back it up with consistent action, that belief becomes who you are. Think about it. If you do something once, it's an event. If you do it consistently, it's a habit. But if you do it long enough and with enough intention, it becomes part of your identity. You're no longer someone who tries to run. You're a runner. You're not someone who wants to eat healthy. You're a healthy eater. You're not someone who is learning to be confident. You're confident. That's the difference between chasing results and living results. I remember working with someone who used to describe themselves as lazy. It wasn't true, but it was the story they'd repeated for years. No matter what they achieved, they'd always downplay it because their wins didn't fit the identity they had. We started with one small win, waking up and making their bed every single day. That's it. 2 minutes of effort. At first, it didn't seem like much, but within weeks, they were walking differently, talking differently. That tiny habit was telling their brain, you're not lazy, you're organized, you're intentional, you're capable. That shift started bleeding into every other area of their life. Your brain is always looking for patterns. When you consistently stack small wins, your brain starts to pattern, match. You start to expect yourself to win because it's what you've been doing. This is why athletes who win keep winning. It's not just skill, it's identity. They've told themselves, I'm a champion, and they've proven it so many times that losing feels unnatural. The key is to make the wins part of your story. Don't just do them, own them. When you take the stairs instead of the elevator, tell yourself, that's because I'm someone who takes care of my health. When you finish a task you've been avoiding, say, that's because I'm someone who finishes what they start. This isn't arrogance, it's alignment. You're aligning your actions with the identity you want, and with enough repetition, that identity becomes automatic. And here's the beauty of it. Once your identity shifts, your behavior doesn't require as much willpower. If you see yourself as a fit person, you don't have to talk yourself into going to the gym. It's just what you do. If you see yourself as a disciplined person, you don't have to fight every temptation. You just act in line with who you are. The battle isn't against your habits anymore. It's against any action that doesn't match your identity. The mistake most people make is trying to overhaul their identity overnight. They want to go from being completely out of shape to seeing themselves as an athlete in a week. It doesn't work like that. You don't force a new identity. You earn it one in small, consistent win at a time. Every time you win, you're casting a vote for the kind of person you want to be. And eventually you'll have so many votes in that direction that the old identity can't win an election in your mind anymore. There's something incredibly freeing about living from a place of identity instead of effort. You're not dragging yourself toward the finish line. You're being pulled by the belief of who you already are. That's when change sticks. That's when you stop saying, I'm trying, and start saying, this is just me now. I've seen this play out with money, fitness, relationships, careers, everywhere. The people who keep their results are the ones who shift who they are at the core. You can't outwork a broken identity, but you can rebuild it with small, intentional wins. And the more you stack them, the more unshakable you become, because no one can take away the belief that you've earned through your own actions. If you've ever felt stuck in an old version of yourself, if you've ever felt trapped by a label you or someone else gave you, start stacking wins that contradict that label. If you think you're disorganized, start doing one small thing each day that proves if you're not. If you think you're bad with people, start having one short conversation each day that proves you can connect. Every time you act against the old identity, you weaken it. And every time you act in line with the new one, you strengthen it. It's not about faking it until you make it. It's about doing it until you become it. And when you become it, there's no going back. Because the moment your small wins start shaping your identity, you stop chasing success and start living it. One of the most overlooked secrets to sustained success is the way we celebrate our progress. Most people think celebration is something you do at the end. When you've reached the big goal, hit the big milestone, achieved the big dream. But that's the problem. If you wait until the very end to feel proud, to reward yourself, to acknowledge what you've done, you'll miss out on the fuel that keeps you going. See, progress is addictive when you allow yourself to feel it. Your brain thrives on reinforcement. Every time you acknowledge a win, no matter how small, you're sending a message to your subconscious. This matters. Keep going. But most people do the opposite. They hit a small goal, and instead of celebrating, they downplay it. They say, it's nothing. It's just one step. And that's why they run out of steam. They rob themselves of the emotional payoff that keeps the fire alive. You don't need to throw a party for every step you take, but you do need to condition yourself to feel good about the process. The more you anchor positive emotion to your actions, the more those actions stick. Think about it like training a muscle. If every rep you do in the gym is followed by a wave of pride, a rush of satisfaction, you'll want to come back. But if you grind through without ever acknowledging the progress, it becomes punishment instead of empowerment. When I talk about celebration, I'm not talking about splurging every time you take action. I'm talking about recognizing yourself in a way that matters to you. Sometimes it's as simple as pausing for a moment, taking a deep breath and saying, I did that. Sometimes it's writing down your win in a journal so you can see your progress stacking up over time. Sometimes it's telling a friend or loved one, this is what I accomplished today, and letting yourself feel their energy. And here's the thing, celebrating doesn't just make you feel good in the moment. It actually builds momentum. Every celebration reinforces the loop in your brain that says, action, reward, repeat. That's how habits become effortless. You don't have to force yourself to keep going because your brain starts craving the next hit of progress. It's no longer just about the end goal. It's about the game of seeing how far you can go. But most people rob themselves of that momentum because they live in, I'll be happy when mode. I'll be happy when I lose the last 20 pounds. I'll be happy when I make 6 figures. I'll be happy when I buy the house. The problem is, when you get there, you've trained yourself to always look at the next mountain instead of enjoying the one you just climbed. That's why so many high achievers feel empty even after big wins. They never learn to celebrate the small victories along the way. Think of it like climbing a staircase. If you only celebrate when you reach the very top, you'll spend most of your journey feeling like you're not there yet. But if you take a moment to acknowledge each step, you realize you've been winning all along. That's not just motivation, it's momentum. And momentum is the most valuable currency in personal growth, because once you have it, it carries you through the hard days. I've seen people completely transform their lives, not because they suddenly became more disciplined or more talented, but because they started recognizing and celebrating the progress they were already making. The celebration made them see themselves differently. They started to believe, I'm the kind of person who wins. And when you believe that, you naturally start winning more. Let me give you an example. A man I worked with was trying to get out of debt. He had a massive number in front of him, and it felt overwhelming. In the past, he would only feel relief if the debt was gone entirely. This time, I told him to celebrate every 1U1000 he paid off. Every time he sent a payment, he'd take a moment to acknowledge it, maybe go for a walk with his wife, and talk about how much closer they were. Over time, the act of making payments became something he looked forward to instead of something that felt like punishment. He went from stressed and overwhelmed to motivated and empowered, and he paid off his debt faster than he ever imagined. That's the magic of celebration. It transforms effort into energy. It turns what could feel like a grind into something you want to keep doing. And it trains your brain to associate the journey with joy, not just the destination with relief. And here's another benefit. Celebrating small wins makes you more resilient when things get tough. Because you've built a bank of emotional proof that you can win, you don't spiral as easily when you hit a setback. You can look back and say, I've been making progress for weeks, months, years. One bad day doesn't erase that. That perspective is priceless because it keeps you from quitting when the initial excitement wears off. So, how do you make celebration part of your life without it feeling forced? First, you make it specific. Don't just say, I'm doing well. Say, I completed that workout. I finished that report. I made that call I was avoiding. Specificity anchors the win in your mind. Second, make it emotional. Don't just check it off. Let yourself feel it. Stand taller. Smile. Take a deep breath and let it sink in. Third, make it frequent. The more often you do it, the more momentum you build, and don't underestimate the power of sharing your wins with others. When you speak your progress out loud, you reinforce it in your own mind and inspire the people around you. Just be careful. Don't share it for approval. Share it for accountability and reinforcement. There's a difference between seeking validation and owning your growth. When you start living this way, your life changes. You stop postponing happiness until the finish line and start living in it every single day. You start to see that the journey isn't something you have to endure. It's something you get to enjoy. And ironically, when you learn to celebrate along the way, you reach your goals faster because you're no longer running on empty. You're fueled by joy, pride, and momentum. If you take one thing away from this, let it be this. The celebration is not the reward for the win. The celebration is what makes the next win possible.